Sadiq Khan is a pathological liar. I write for The Sun a fair bit, even though they're not happy with my association with Tommy Robinson at the moment. Basically, I watched his film.
Silenced?
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
Brilliant. The actual message was, if you continue to talk about Tommy Robinson, you will be expelled from Reform UK. They're supposed to be representing free speech, and that's the reason why I've left Reform.
What about mass deportation? Is that on the table?
With Reform UK, I think it is. Detain, deport, get rid of them.
What about remigration?
Putting them back into their own countries, you mean? Absolutely.
Did you get the impression that prison officers were in favour of Tommy or not in favour of Tommy?
I was inspired by that man. He's trying to do good for all of us, and he's been prosecuted and persecuted.
I think Rupert and Lee secretly support Tommy.
I'm going to say that I know they do.
I want to say a quick thank you to our sponsors, Gold Seal. I use their products every single day, and now I finally get to work with them. I use their products for anti-inflammatory, reduced anxiety, better sleep, and mental clarity. I'm going to put a link to their website in the description, along with a 10% discount code for you to take advantage of. Go and have a look at their website, see if there's anything in there for you. I hope you enjoy this week's episode, and good health.
Howard.
Great to meet you.
Yeah, and you. Thank you for coming on. I'm delighted you've come on, especially with current affairs and what's happening with Tommy Robinson. I know you've shown public support for him. You received a lot of backlash. So this interview, I really want to cover you leaving Reform, Nigel Farage's agenda, your support for Tommy Robinson, and wherever it may take us. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of it, can you give my audience a bit of a backstory? Like, what's your background?
Okay, fine. Well, I've hit the wonderful age of 70 years of age now, and to cut a long story short, my background is really in communications, comms, marketing, advertising, that sort of thing. And up until about 15 to 20 years ago, I was doing some small business consultancy work for businesses, SMEs with about staff of about 30 or 40 people. And I got involved with several companies in logistics, trucking businesses. And I helped them to actually communicate and trade their way out of problems they're in, because probably, your viewers will understand this, and those who drive trucks and vans will understand that the cost of fuel was the major issue. And I was working with one particular trucking company who's got about 50 trucks, so it's quite a big SME. And they've got 40-ton trucks, etc., which do about 5, 6, 7 miles to the gallon. And I was sitting having a cup of tea with the MD of that company, and I saw on his table a little spreadsheet, and there was a line which said fuel next to it. 46% of his costs was fuel, of which 70% went to the government in tax. And I said, I couldn't believe it. And I said, really? I knew we were expensive in this country for fuel, and we still are to some extent. But I thought, hang on a second, there's something here that's not happening. The RAC, the AA, and the FTA, and the RHO, and other acronym association companies weren't doing much for the motorist. And we were being, basically, I won't say the word I'm thinking upon, but those particular, what we're seeing here, 37 million motorists, the very commercial heartbeat of this economy, was paying ridiculous amounts of tax, something like £1 billion a week. I said, that can't be right, because if you actually reduce their costs, inflation would come down, product costs would come down, and there'd be more profit, more corporation tax. We just need to stimulate the economy. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I set up a thing called FairFuelUK, and that's been going for 15 years. And because of my campaigning work and working right at the heart of government, mostly with the Tory government, of course, we've managed to get fuel duty frozen for the last 15 years. And it's the longest, in terms of a tax or a levy, it's the longest frozen tax that's ever happened. In fact, it's come down by 10% since 2011, when George Osborne was convinced by my campaigning to actually cut it by a penny. If it wasn't for FairFuelUK, you'd be paying something like £2 a litre at the moment, and that's what we've stopped happening. And we would be in recession if it wasn't for the campaign I've been running.
And was this part of your campaign against ULEZ as well? Was this a separate?
Well, no, that's really related to reform, because I obviously, because of my campaigning for the motorist, I was actually involved with the media a lot, talking about every time there was a budget or a financial statement twice a year, this sort of thing. I used to talk about, will fuel duty go up? And I got to work with The Sun. In fact, I write for The Sun a fair bit, even though they're not happy with my association with Tommy Robinson at the moment. But we can come on to that. But yeah, every year, every budget, I run basically an independent economic analysis, was usually with a company called the Centre of Economic Business Research, who are one of the highest and most respected economic analysts group in the world. And they helped me to prove that if you put up fuel duty, what it would do to the economy, what it would do to jobs, what it would do to inflation, what it would do to GDP, what it would do to investment. And that's how I worked. I could have actually blockade the whole of London and places like that with trucks, because I did have the RHA and FTA actually backing me. They sponsored me for a good 10 years. But unfortunately, I've fallen out with them because I don't support net zero and they do. So that's another thing to talk about later. But what happened was that I was on one media show, which a certain person called Richard Tice, who was at the time leader of Reform UK, had a show on Talk TV every Sunday. And I had half an hour with him most Sundays, talking about it was called Tice Gear, play on Talk, Top Gear, about political motoring issues, and that's how I got to know Richard. And this is about 3 or 4 years ago. And as we got to know each other, and he seemed to like what I was doing and what I was saying, and his listeners and viewers seemed to like what I was saying. He asked me, "Let's go for a coffee." He sat down with me. He said, "How would you like to stand to be mayor of London?" And my campaign has always been apolitical, even though deep down I'm right of centre. But I'm not one of those far right ones. What are they called? The far right thugs, or that lot? We'll come on to that.
We will.
We certainly will. Well, Richard obviously coined that, but Richard said, yeah. And it took me 2 or 3 months to say yes, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't doing anything that would really actually jeopardise the FairFuelUK campaign.
Was that something you'd ever considered before it was proposed to you?
No. Not at all. The only reason really I did say yes is because of the 𝐬𝐿ES expansion. And that's the reason why you're asking your question. I got involved with the 𝐬𝐿ES, basically anti-𝐬𝐿ES protest rallies. And I went on to 30 or 40 of them around in the time I was actually campaigning. And Richard was the leader then. But during that time I was campaigning to become Mayor of London, Nigel Farage wasn't the leader.
Who was the initial leader?
Richard Tice. Richard Tice.
Okay.
And people like Ben Habib was deputy leader, and David Ball was the other deputy leader. And it's a shame that a lot of the good, loyal people that were around on the Brexit party and went with Reform UK with Richard are no longer there. They've been thrown out, but we can come on to that. And this is, which is very sad, under the new chairmanship of 𝐬𝐿ES. And he is, no doubt about it, is actually instigated getting rid of a lot of good people. And we spoke about it just now, but when Richard was asked by Camilla Tominey on GB News about certain things about it, Tommy Robinson, and he said, "We don't want anything to do with the Tommy Robinson or that lot." And that's when I suddenly sat up and realised, hang on a second, I'm that lot.
You're a member of Reform by this stage?
Yes, I'm a member if I had to be, because I was standing for as London Mayor.
So how did that materialise?
Well, it's simply that I stood. I said I agreed to Richard's request. He loved it because I'm basically a motoring campaigner, and the biggest issue in London at the time was congestion charge, 𝐬𝐿ES, and all those sorts of things, parking, and everything about the whole of London was just snarled up and congested, all because of Sadiq Khan's policies.
Let's touch base on Sadiq Khan's policies and Sadiq Khan himself. I get a sense that he's hiding very important truths from the public, and I'd imagine you've got a much better insight into that than me. And then his other policies. I mean, the knife crime, the gun crime, the street robbery, you're not safe to wear your watch. How would you have addressed all of those bones of contention?
Well, it's very, very simple. I mean, obviously, we would double the number of police on the street for a start. I spoke to a lot of the Met Police, senior Met Police, right up to superintendent level, and they all agreed with me. This is what's needed. And we needed more police present on the street, visible policing. That's the sort of we wanted. The other thing also, I introduced an idea, which I bet you someone will pinch this idea off me. I think every 24-hour outlet should have a police station within that thing, like a McDonald's should have a police station in there, a manned police station, so that when my daughter, she won't go into London now because she's scared stiff at night times now. But if she knew we could go into somewhere like a 24-hour Asda or a supermarket where there was a manned station, a policeman, there'd be for people to go to. That was one of the unique things we're talking about. But the most important thing involved with this was more police on the street. That was the most thing. We also have metal detectors and all those sorts of things. I bring back stop and search, all those sorts of things that everyone. You ask anyone in terms of common sense, and ask any policeman if they had the support of those particular tools, we would have knife crime going down rather than going up.
And what sort of power would you have given the police? Would you have armed them?
Probably not. I think that is actually. I'm not a massive fan of referendum, but I think I would have asked the London people in a referendum in London, would you be happy for our Met Police to carry guns? But certainly they should all be carrying tasers. All that sort of thing. So my heart says yes, we should do that. My head says I'm worried about it. The guns on the street. I do not want us to be like what is happening in the States and all those sorts of things. Having said that, the mayor of New York, his policy was actually any crime was a crime. In this country, you can go and steal up to £200 from a shop and you won't be done. In terms of and the same with pickpocketing and all these sorts of things. The other day I came out of Charing Cross Station, and there was this young lady with a lovely, beautiful smartphone. She was in front of her, and I could see on the other side of the street 3 guys with balaclavas, all dressed in black, with balaclavas on electric bikes, ready to pounce on anyone with a. I told her to get back, and once I told her to put it away, they went off. This is the sort of thing. Now, if that had been a policeman around the place, if we'd had 2 or 3 police, invisible range for everyone in London, crime would be coming down, particularly knife crime.
Yeah, it seems like there's no fear of consequence whatsoever. Sadiq Khan says on repeat how much safer he's making London, whereas the stats will contradict that quite heavily.
Massively.
So, which goes back to what I was mentioning earlier about since we're being lied to by Sadiq Khan as to where the budget's going, what he can and can't do, where he's getting his votes from, where he turns blind eyes. I mean, is there anything that would help me get a better understanding about the man and anybody listening? Because he's not a popular figure.
This is his 3rd term as mayor, and he only got 18% of London vote. That means 82% either didn't come out or didn't vote for him. I got 3.5%. I came 5th. Now, I think it's about 14 of us standing there. The Tories came 2nd, and I was actually attacked by a lot of people. I shouldn't be standing because I'm splitting the vote and this sort of thing. But even if you had my vote to Susan Hall, who the Tory candidate, we wouldn't have beaten him. And when you analyse his vote, and I think there's a lot of problems with the postal voting system, is one of the things which really worries me, and I think he benefits from that. If you analyse his vote, it's definitely coming from ethnic groups, that immigrants, basically, not true original London residents. And I don't know how we're going to get past this situation unless we do something about it. I will say this and I'm going to be very strong about this. Sadiq Khan is a pathological liar. And I'll say it again, he is a pathological liar. He knows nothing else but he tried his thoughts. We had consultation agreements with the 𝐬𝐿E's expansion scheme, and the majority of people didn't want it, but he's still gone ahead with it. He manipulated data, scientific data from Imperial College, to say that the congestion, the 𝐬𝐿E's already, the one that was the inner 𝐬𝐿E's at the point, because it's being expanded, what he was pushing for, to the M25, that had actually been beneficial and improved our air quality. It hadn't.
I never see him promote or celebrate anything traditionally British. Christmas, Easter, for example. Ramadan, absolutely. He shouts that from the rooftops. And it amazes me that he is the mayor of London, because nothing appears like London about him.
No, well, I'm a born-bred Londoner. I was born in southeast London, in 1954. A long time back there. And I remember when smoke was coming out of chimneys, coke and all that sort of thing. It was horrible. You walk out your door, you're coughing and spluttering like mad. And this is what people don't understand, is that the air we breathe in London has improved massively. In the last 15 years, emissions have fallen by something like 50%. And if we'd allowed, without all these edicts, like banning the sale of diesel and petrol cars for 2030 ban, which, by the way, was introduced, by the way, by Boris Johnson. We mustn't forget that. Boris Johnson, he plays a good game in certain things, but he's the one that's given us Boris bikes, which the cycle lanes and all those sorts of things, which is called massive congestion. And, we've now got 20-mile-an-hour zones, and a car going at 20 mile an hour actually gives out more particulates and more emissions than a car going at 30 mile an hour.
Going back to Reform, you've mentioned Boris Johnson. I read somewhere that there was talks that Boris Johnson was going to join Reform. Any truth in that?
Well, there's a lot of rumours been flying around. I was privy when I was involved a little bit more, and obviously not now, with Reform. There was a lot of people about. I know of at least 8 Tory backbench MPs that were coming across. They haven't come across yet, and I know who they are. And there's some really good names in there. And I'm not talking about Jacob Rees-Mogg and people like that, even because he's got dark blue running through his veins. He won't move from it, but he sympathises with Reform. There's no doubt about it, and this is what I called out when I spoke at Tommy Robinson's rally a few weeks back. I did say we need all of the right to come together because at the moment it's too disparate. There's too many people sniping at each other, and Nigel's one of them that snipes across the whole of the right side rather than coming together. We all want small state, we all want our borders controlled, and we want low taxes. What are we fighting about? Mm-hmm. And, I still believe Reform is our only option.
My first bone of contention with Nigel Farage is this. He went on LBC and he publicly said that Tommy Robinson has been convicted for beating up women. It simply isn't true. And let's just say it was a knee-jerk comment and he got his wires crossed. Whatever the weather. We know that after the backlash he would have received from telling that whopping great big lie to denounce...
And that's what it was, a lie.
A complete lie. We know that he now knows that he made a mistake. And I think, for me, if I'm presented with new information, I'm inclined to change my mind. And I think that's the sign of a true leader. And also, if I get something wrong, apologise and say, do you know what? I spoke too quick. I didn't think this isn't actually true. At least correct it on record. So... is this the kind of man Farage is? Not accountable. Lip service run. Is that him?
Well, there's a lot of things. Let's unpick all of that because that point about what Richard Tice said in his interview, he said that lot. I went back to Richard privately in our private WhatsApp group. I said, what are you saying? He said, oh, well, you know what I mean now. I said, no, I don't know what you mean because that lot also are Reform UK voters. And many of them support Tommy Robinson, and Tommy Robinson also told people to actually vote Reform. But Tommy doesn't want to be in Reform. He doesn't want to be a leader of Reform. He doesn't anything like that. And I said this, and I got quite angry, and I sent a private message to Nigel Farage, and I said, Nigel, I'm not happy with what Richard's done. And Richard's a friend, and he's and I know his partner Isabel Oakeshott very well, and the people like that. But I said, Nigel, this is wrong. And Nigel came back with me and said, yes, Richard's gone over the top. Now, there you go. That's private. No one else saw that. But I'm saying it now. And to some extent, Richard's upset because I did reveal it in another interview that he said that. But I think, unfortunately, that we've got a situation now in the Reform leadership that they seek celebrity and they seek billionaires, millionaires. They see that seems to be their pedestal.
Have they forgotten the working class?
That's where I was going. You're absolutely, honestly... From my point of view, the grassroots people who really want change in this country, because we all know that the Tories... The only reason Reform are growing is because the Tories and Labour are so bloody useless. We've got a problem now in a situation where there's a massive great position for centre-right party, low tax, small state, border protect our borders. Those 3 major things that I believe in and I've always believed in. And bear in mind, you've got to, because I'm old... I voted in 1973 to enter the common market. But notice I said common market. I didn't say the EU.
Yeah.
I'm a great believer in, trading. You can see that people now, we've got Donald Trump, that trade and tariffs is on everyone's, sort of agenda at the moment, talking about that. But back in 73, I wanted the common market to aid small businesses and business, etc., and to actually really stimulate growth. And that word's been used by the Labour Party now, called growth, and you can see what's happening with them, with inflation up to 3%, 0.1% growth in GDP. It's not working, and that's what's happening. And unfortunately, even though, bear in mind they've got 4 million voters in the last general election Reform, but only 5 MPs. And Reform UK got more votes than the Lib Dems, and they got something like 72 MPs.
Do Reform MPs get political freedom to say what they like and what they actually feel, or are they controlled and governed by Farage?
It's interesting, and this is relevant if I just go back to the point. On the day of the London mayoral election, the headquarters of Reform UK were nowhere to be seen to help me. I went up to London at Westminster, the Methodist church there right by the Queen Elizabeth, where I went to vote. You'd think I'd have a camera crew there, wouldn't you, or something like that, seeing me putting my thing in the ballot box.
Great PR.
Well, they weren't there. The only person who was there was Rupert Lowe, and Rupert put his hands around me. So I'm sorry they're not here, Howard. I mean, and he's actually expressed some opinions about certainly what he's misgivings about the new people in headquarters, and it's now become full of young people who are actually on. Can I say they worship Nigel Farage?
Mm.
And that's the sadness at the moment. They don't. And I've made the point. I mean, I'm not. The reason why I left Reform is very simple. 4 or 5 days before I left, I got a text from someone very senior in headquarters saying, "Howard, if you keep talking about Tommy Robinson or supporting him, I'm afraid you're going to be expelled."
What was the first thing you said about Tommy Robinson that was in support that got their attention?
Well, it happened last August 2024. And it's one thing we haven't mentioned, actually, is that I've just came second as standing as an MP down in Dover and Deal. I got 23% of the vote down there. Just 3.5 weeks campaigning. If I had another month, I'd probably be a Reform UK MP. I think we would have nicked it. And Nigel, I was offered 3, following my London mayoral election failure. I didn't get elected, but I did help actually stimulate membership because of what I was saying and from Londoners. I was offered 3 sort of decent seats, and I chose the one which is the front line of immigration, Dover and Deal. Right. And so I went down there, and I've got some fantastic people down there crying out, absolutely crying out for change. And don't forget, that's the home of, or previously the MP was Natalie Elphicke, who walked the floor from Tory to Labour. I mean, can you believe it, going from a right-wing position to a left-wing position?
I can see people shifting from left to right because it makes perfect sense, but not right to left. That's insanity.
Well, that's what she did. And so no one wanted to vote Tory, so it was an easy thing. I knocked the Tories into 3rd place. And it was won by a Labour guy called Mike Tapp, but he'd been campaigning for 2.5 years down there. 2.5 years to my 3.5 weeks. I couldn't get round to every door in Dover and Deal. It was impossible. But, getting 23%, I was very proud of that. And so were they, Reform headquarters. And that's before you asked that question about, when did they learn about me and Tommy Robinson? I suppose what happened I think it was mid-July, that suddenly there was a new chairman. And they dumped Ben Habib because he was deputy leader. They got rid of David Ball. They moved Richard from leader down to deputy leader. All these things are going on. They got rid of a lot of other people as well there, particularly people like 𝐸𝐿 Towler. You may have heard of him. He was a publicity manager. He's grown up by the side of Nigel for years in terms of advising about publicity. He just had him, I think. Lots of other people as well. Paul Oakton, who was the chair Reform UK, he was thrown out. Lots of good people who were loyal to the process of building up Reform UK were thrown out.
Do you know why?
Yeah, I'm going to come on to that. Ben Habib is probably the one the best to talk about it. You've got to appreciate that up until yesterday, Nigel owned the party. He was the majority shareholder. It was a limited company, Reform UK. It wasn't a political party. It was, and this is why Ben Habib was really upset, because he wanted the party to be democratised and become a proper political party for the members. There were no members up until yesterday, but what's happened is Nigel's given up his shares. And there's 200,000 members now, which is more than the Tories have got, of the party for reform. And those people now, effectively, in quotes, control the party. Well, they don't. What's happened is a new limited company has been set up with a new board, which has got 𝐬𝐫𝐫𝐿 as the chairman. Nigel's on that board. They still control the decision-making process of what happens with reform. It is not a democratic party yet. But a lot of people might say, I'm sniping from the sidelines. I don't care what people think about me. I'm telling you now, I believe in Reform UK's policies.
Which are?
I mean, for one of them, they want to cut fuel duty by 20 pence. That's very close to my heart. Obviously, I've been campaigning 15 years for that. They want to cut the blob, the the civil service, the whole thing like that. But I mean, if I said to you and your listeners, could you save £5 out of £100 of what you spend every month? You could do it.
What about mass deportation? Is that on the table?
With Reform UK, I think it is. I think it is. Certainly, they're much stronger. If you listen to Rupert Lowe, it basically says detain and deport. He's always saying detain, deport, get rid of them.
What about remigration?
Putting them back into their own countries, you mean? Absolutely, yeah. Why can't we do that? I don't understand why doing that. Australia did it. Why can't we do it?
What's their political stance on Islam?
It's a good question. Can I say what my political stance is? That because
Go on then.
I'm worried sick what's happening in the Western world. Actually, I think Islam is infecting political democracies, and it's worrying me considerably about how it's working. And I can say this because I've got friends who are Muslims, and very good friends, etc. But they don't, and most of them agree with my stance on that. My hesitancy is that I'm not an Islamophobe. I'm anti-Islam. This infestation. If I just do not understand, and Sadiq Khan's the classic case. He is a Muslim, and he's renamed underground stations and train stations, and you got something like I don't know, Dagenham Heathway. You've got it in English, and next to it you've got the actual the Arabic version of it.
I think you've got Whitechapel in Arabic as well.
Yeah, those are the sorts of things that are happening, and we didn't ask for that. And this is the point. And the whole thing about Islam worries me is the way they treat women, where they treat people, and of course, and coming on to Tommy Robinson, this is what I learned. And I didn't answer the question just now. You said to me, when did when did Reform actually suddenly wake up to the fact that I support Tommy? Well, like Rupert Lowe, I don't know Tommy. I didn't know him. I didn't know him at all. I just saw this man that was basically, I watched his film.
Silenced.
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
Brilliant. And he was telling the truth in that film, and very intelligent. And we're going to talk about my visit, what I can say about it. I've never met a more inspirational person once I met him. But last August, I didn't know him from Adam. I just knew that he was the one that, to me, highlighted the child rock gangs across the country. And that's what was doing. And predominantly that was driven by this Islamic driven bunch of cretinous people who have no respect for women, no respect for people. The respect they have is for themselves and dominating our lives. And I saw what he did, and I saw that film, and I went on the 𝐷𝐴𝐿 show. I was invited on the 𝐷𝐴𝐿 show. And Dan, just like you just asked me, quite straightforward, what do you think? Well, I said he shouldn't be in prison. He most certainly shouldn't be in solitary. And yes, he's broken the law because of, in terms of actually he showed the film and he promised he wouldn't show the film. But this is a civil crime, and I don't know anyone civil crime that's in solitary. I've looked through, a plethora of information about civil crime and what the actual punishment had been. But I've never seen anyone been put into solitary at all.
Do you admire Tommy Robinson's defiance?
Oh, totally. It's astonishing, and that's what I said. At that point, I don't know him. I'm not a friend of his. I don't give a damn about his past. But what he's doing now, at that point, was highlighting the child rock gangs and what he's journeyed and his film that he's been penalised for and now he's in prison for. I'm sorry, he shouldn't be there.
The systemic rape of young British children has probably been going on for a lot longer than anybody realises. And now the person that's bringing it to the forefront, which he is, we know other people have spoke about it.
Yeah.
Nigel Farage likes to take credit. He needs to remember that Tommy didn't just speak about it, he relentlessly pursued it until the avenue was exhausted. He didn't give up the fight.
Well, that's right. And the mainstream media is one reason why he's in prison now, because they all ganged up on him. Not just the Prime Minister regarding the fact of far-right thugs. He was associating that he instigated violence and all these sorts of things. He didn't do any of those things. And going back to Nigel Farage's position on this, and this is what I called for in that interview, and this is where Reform fell out of love with me, I think. I simply said that Nigel should actually grow some cojones and actually say, yes, he should be credited for what he's done, Tommy. All those sorts of things. We don't want him in our party. That's fine. You can say that. You've got every right to say he doesn't want someone to play. They don't want me in the party now. I don't want to be in it either. But Nigel, all he had to do was just grow up and be an adult about the whole relationship. In transactional analyst terms, he shouldn't be the child; he should be the adult here, and just recognise that what he's doing he supports. But unfortunately, he couldn't do that.
Do you think Nigel Farage should make a public apology for his lies about Tommy?
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, I've said that. I've said that in various social media comments. I've said exactly that. And I saw I think it's his wife, his ex-wife, who actually wrote a tweet, didn't she, saying this? He's not like that, Tommy. And I couldn't believe it like that. She had a go at Nigel Farage about it, and I saw that, and I retweeted it. I pushed it out everywhere, what she said.
But it wouldn't be hard to get Tommy's DBS, his criminal record, backtracked, and you would see that he's never, ever been convicted of domestic abuse or beating up women. I mean, it was just an atrocious lie to say. You see, when you lie about someone like that, especially in, say, Tommy's world, he's a working class man and he's also in jail. Let's imagine that Tommy got moved to a Cat D jail and he can roam freely and someone's got LBC in their cell. And they hear Nigel Farage, because Nigel Farage's sound bites travel. He's a big figure. Imagine if someone heard that lie. So Tommy Robinson's been convicted for beating up women. He hasn't, for the record, in case anybody shops that. But then they go and see Tommy in the fitness centre, and then he gets attacked by 4, 5, 6, 7 people. That's so irresponsible of Nigel to lie about that, and he should be pressured even now because he thinks it's done, dusted, on to the next. He needs to be reminded of that lie, how severe the consequences could have been, and he needs to make a public apology. And we said I asked you, do you think he's forgotten the working class, which you said yes. It's almost like he's dismissed the working class because by denouncing Tommy and lying about him, he knows that Tommy comes with 1 million working class followers and supporters. 1 million people can't be that silly. If he's a bad person, he's not going to get such a substantial following. So I'm just trying to work out what Farage's what his real issue is.
Well, his real issue at the moment in time is he wants to be Prime Minister. He wants to that's his aim. He thinks the best way is to make sure he gets rid of people that actually remove from anything that will actually detract from him getting his coveted number 10 job.
But is Farage for the people or is Farage for Farage?
Okay, you've asked that direct question, and I never avoid a direct question. I think he's much more for Farage. We got to give him congratulations. We got Brexit of sorts. It's not completely done, and that sort of thing. And he was brilliant. And there's no one articulates better than Nigel Farage. He doesn't use an alter cue. He's the consummate professional in terms of communication and the message. But in terms of actually getting facts wrong, I mean, he did the same with me. He was asked by Christopher Hope, what do you think about Howard Cox actually saying, leaving the party? And he came up, it's only about a month ago, he came back, Nigel, or Howard said some stupid things about Islamists, immigrants ruling the media and this sort of thing and ruling the country. And I thought, where did he get that from? And I did say it on the Dan Wootton show last August, so why didn't he pick me up then on it, is the first stage. All I said, and Dan Wootton replayed it in an interview I did with him about 6 weeks ago, as you can see, Howard didn't say it like that. I was making the point we are being ruled by the problems of immigration and immigrants at the moment. This country is being dominated. We can see that by how many people coming in and how many people, like that little village where it is, they've got 700 people in it. There's 800 immigrants coming into a hotel to take over 700, doubling the population of a little village.
Very unfair.
Those sorts of things are being ignored. Nigel Farage is going to be around, and I think there's a good chance he's going to be leader of the opposition properly in 2029. I think there'll be an election before then.
When you left Reform,
Yep.
because you didn't want to be dictated to anymore
Correct.
or censored, did Nigel Farage contact you?
No.
Has he spoke to you since?
No.
Not one word?
Not one word. I've got his phone. I can send a private message to him. We can talk to him, but I don't think he's man enough to do that. I mean, one of the things that happened when I stood for London Mayor, which was May last year, and the general election was July the 4th. Since July the 4th, not one person from Reform UK headquarters has spoken to me.
That's insane.
And now they're getting, they're going for a celebrity. I think there's some SAS hero is now going to be standing for London Mayor or something. Ant Middleton, is it? I think his name is. I think they're doing that sort of thing. And a lot of people are very upset the way I've been treated. And even people within the headquarters, who don't want to be, I can't reveal the names obviously, but they've actually written to me privately, Howard, you've been treated terribly. I did everything right. I did everything wrong. Actually putting reform up there, I've helped to do that. But because I simply said I will not be told what I can say about things like Tommy Robinson, and really, what really triggered me to actually say that I've had enough. I sat down with my wife was when Richard Tice said that lot.
Just before we start really loading up on the whole Tommy Robinson thing, just want to ask you a question. Anyone that is on X or following Reform's progress and got their eye on the 5 MPs, I think it's clear to notice that Rupert Lowe is the man of the moment at the moment, because he seems to say what he likes when he likes, which is great. It'd be nice if they all done the same thing. So I was wondering, are they all sort of playing their part of the team, covering each other's arse? But the main question is, do you think there's going to come a time where Rupert and Farage clash?
I think it's becoming that way behind closed doors now. Rupert is not one to being told what to do. I mean, interestingly, I tweeted to Rupert recently because Rupert came out with saying he's going to write to the Minister of Justice for the bad treatment that Tommy's getting, either solitary and, whether he's being fed properly and all those sorts of things, and he's been protected, and his right to communicate with his family and close friends. All those things he was going to sort out, and and I think he's done that. In fact, I know he's done that. I said exactly the same thing. Okay, I didn't win a seat. I could have done. I wonder if I would have been allowed to actually say something if I'd won the seat in Dover and Deal. It'd been an interesting situation. Rupert, not a great fan of headquarters. He spent his own money to become, he's in Great Yarmouth up in Norfolk. He's MP for there. He doesn't take a salary. At all, the MP salary that goes into charities every month. He's a fantastic guy in that respect. I've got nothing but the high respect for Rupert Lowe, and also to some extent Lee Anderson. I've got a lot of respect for. I've lost respect for people like Richard Tice, who I regard as a close friend, simply because they've got the trappings there. They're sitting now on the green leather benches. They've got what they wanted in that situation, but they've, as we just said now, they've forgotten who got them there.
Lee Anderson seems like one of us.
He is what he said. You saw him. He actually got the whip removed when he was in the Tories, simply for saying for those things regarding actually London is being taken over by the Islamic faith, but the Muslims. And he said those things, and he had to apologise for that, and he refused to. And he's the biggest attacker of Sadiq Khan you'll ever see in his speeches. He's brilliant, and I've got nothing but respect. And on the day I came second in July the 4th, July the 5th, when the votes were counted. I got this lovely message from Lee Anderson to Howard, you're a credit to the party. I did everything right. But because there's one thing, as I said, all of Reform's policies, near as damn it.
You pray to the wrong God.
Well, I'm a big agnostic atheist. You can call me what you want. But the fact is, I cannot believe the way Tommy Robinson. Tommy Robinson, the thing is, I'm proud of what I've done. My wife's proud of me. Hundreds, maybe thousands of people have written to me saying my principles is more important than me becoming an MP. They can't believe that I've cooked my goose completely. There's no way back to Reform. And even though I've been approached by several other parties, significant parties asked me to join them.
And massive respect for doing that. So let's talk about detail it, the backlash you got initially for supporting Tommy Robinson, but then take me through the transition and document the support you've since had for supporting Tom Robinson.
Well, you're right. I mean, I knew my time was over with Reform from August of last year because I contacted their HQ and no one responded to me. Reform, you got up until then. I was probably, I'm one of the, the 98 people that came second in becoming an MP against Labour right across the country, 98 constituencies. I stood as, London Mayor. So I thought I might have a little bit of, respect from headquarters, so we should talk to them. Because I gave up, bear in mind, that was when I was 68, 69, 70. In those 2 years of my life when I should be tending my petunias, this is sort of thing. I don't know what a petunia looks like, but seriously, I mean, my wife wasn't happy me suddenly, there are many reasons why I've done it. I mean, there's a lot of things that happened in my past, which, because I was screwed out of a lot of money and things like that. I had to come back and work and things like that. But that's another story. The journey from being a pariah in the eyes of Reform UK headquarters was done by, being sent to Coventry, basically. I'd been silenced. No one spoke to me. And I thought, hang on, I got to near Christmas, and I was speaking to certain people like Rupert and Lee Anderson, who was still quite talking to me, and people like Martin Daubney at GB News, who was a good friend, because bear in mind he was a Brexit Party MEP, right. and I got to know him pretty well. And he said, "Oh, keep your head down, Howard. You're a shoo-in to become an MP when Reform win." And I thought, yeah, okay, but I said, I don't feel that this party really cares about real people. And then, as I said, when Richard Tice was asked by Camilla Tominey on GB News about Tommy Robinson, he said, we don't want anything to do with them, all that lot. That was the precipice for me. I jumped over and said, bye-bye, Reform, I don't want anything to do with you. And I kept quiet for a bit, and then I got I did several interviews regarding Tommy Robinson, and I went to, in fact, I actually, about a year ago, before the London mayoral election, there was a Tommy Robinson rally in London, and I was caught up in it. I was actually up in London for some other reason. And I looked at this thing, I don't want anything to do with that. And there was a friend of mine who was in Reform then with me, said, we better get away from us. We don't want to be seen anywhere near this lot. He even said it. I said, why not? I want to hear what this person's got to say. So I did. I stood way back in the crowd listening to Tommy. And I thought, yeah, this bloke's talking sense. And there was a lot of other people there I liked, people like Andrew Bridgen, and there's lots of people that I've got a good deal of respect because they actually put their heads above the parapet in terms of what they say.
Well, you've actually since then gone one step further. You spoke at a Tommy Robinson demonstration, a free Tommy demo. How did you find that, and what was the crowd like there?
There was a bunch of skinheads with cherry red boots and beating up people. And all. No, that's exactly the image that the mainstream media wanted to actually portray. Because up the road by the Trafalgar Square, we were down at Whitehall outside 10 Downing Street, and by the Cenotaph. It was respectful. People were doing, YMCA because we just learned that
it works in the States.
Yes, well, why not? And I saw a range of ages. Most predominantly white. I have to say that, but people absolutely respectful, kind. There was not one bit of a problem whatsoever. There was no arrests down there, even though there were some at the counter protests, wasn't there?
Well, there was an anti-racism protest that were protesting against a demonstration of people that are anti-racist.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Well, it makes you wonder who's orchestrating this. This is the point we can come on to Tommy in a minute.
And what was your message you delivered when you was on that stage?
Well, my major message was this: that one is the big one was of Tommy should be out of prison and certainly out of solitary. Those two messages that I put across. But my message was I was calling on, and it's not been published in the mainstream media. If I'd said something about fuel duty, I've been published in 4 or 5 papers. But my message was simply this: can the people on the right get together? And I suggest that 𝐸𝐵 Badenoch and Nigel Farage pick up the phone and get round the table with Tommy. I actually called for that, and no one said that. And that's most applause I got when I stood there. I mean, and when I walked off the stage, people came up to me. I must have had. I went to the Westminster Arms pub after that, and I walked through the crowd, and I couldn't believe the warmth people had for me and said, "Thank you, Hal, for doing that sort of thing." I wasn't there for that. I was there because I wanted to tell people that, my small position of influence that I have in the media and things like that, I wanted people to recognise that Tommy Robinson is a bloody good guy. We should listen to what he's saying. We should support that man because he's doing the right thing and he's trying to protect our children and our wives and kids and daughters. Those are the sorts of things we should be talking about. And the message I got walking as I was back through the crowd, and thank you for help setting that up, Liam. I think you're very much involved with that. Was one of love for Tommy.
I introduced you onto the stage.
Yes, you did. Yes, I know. And you put the microphone up because I'm 6'4". Yes, that's right. I remember that. But your question's valid. The people there were decent family people. These people don't go out protesting for the sake of protesting.
They want change.
Exactly. And we're fed up.
They're sad and lost.
Yeah. And they were hoping Reform UK would fill that gap of actually working for the common people and listening to common sense. Both, I think, they failed at the moment.
Well, you see that 100,000 people you stood in front of and spoke to. It was 4 or 5 months previous to Nigel Farage's ridiculous comments and lies. They were all Reform UK voters.
Yeah.
And he's just dismissed them all.
Well, he's relying on the fact is that the Tories and Labour are so bad that no one's going to... That Reform is still the only choice. And if you ask me, would I vote for Reform UK, I would. As you stand there, I'm not voting because of Nigel Farage. I'm voting for the fact is we want change and we want to stop the illegal immigration. We want lower taxation and we want a small state.
Do you think Farage will be replaced?
I don't know.
Do you hope he will?
Oh, that's a very good question, Leah. You're really putting me on the spot there. I don't think he's the leader we should have. I think Rupert Lowe should be the leader, and I think Nigel should be in charge of communications or something like that. And,
That's a good shout.
well, I do, because he's consummate communicator. There's no one does it better on the planet. I've watched him do things at major conferences. I mean, on the day that Hamas attacked Israel, October the 7th, 2023. Let's get my figures right. I opened the London Reform UK major conference. It's a big. There was about 2,000 people there, and I was the opening speaker there. And I said, my name's 𝐬𝐽 I'm standing for London Mayor, and I got standing ovation. And one of the other things I got a standing ovation for was, by the way, I'm a devout Thatcherite. Because I am. That's what I go back that far. Remember?
Do you miss her?
I miss what she stood for. She wasn't perfect. There's lots of things were done wrong, but she was stabbed in the back by Michael Heseltine and Geoffrey Howe. If people might remember those people, these people were just nasty people that because they didn't get to the top job. But she's the person that was for the common man. She was, the common person. Sorry, I might get these right. Now I mustn't get all my LGBT stuff.
Oh, blimey, yeah. DEI within the podcast.
No. Liam, no, don't get on that thing sort of thing. Everything should be based on merit, not in terms of actually just ticking a box.
Meritocracy,
exactly.
please.
Yes, please do. They've lost that. But if you listen to people like Rupert Lowe and Lee Anderson, there's hope. I really do think that.
I think Rupert and Lee secretly support Tommy, but they're too scared to say it out loud.
I actually think I'm going to say that I know they do. I mean, I've spoken various things in the past, and it's very simple. They may not like. I mean, you see, they keep pushing this story about Tommy's, his past. I'm sorry, we've all got a past. So this is irrelevant to what he was doing now.
And his past is nowhere near as bad as they make out.
Exactly.
A few scuffles here and there. So what? And the mortgage fraud, it's well documented. It was a stitch up.
Yeah. As you know, I visited Tommy.
Let me ask you this question then, because hundreds of thousands of Americans and the entirety of the UK would love to go and visit Tommy in jail. And I can tell you now, hundreds of thousands of people are trying to get a visit with Tommy Robinson. How did you manage to get a visit with Tommy?
Yes, I was lucky. There's no doubt about it. Paul Thorpe, as you know, one of your friends, and also a big supporter of Tommy, he also runs podcasts and stuff. And he had me on his show once. And he said, how would you like to come and visit Tommy sometime with me? And I was going to go along with, I think there's a German, a transatlantic American journalist called Vicky...
For Urban Scoop?
Yes, Urban Scoop. And they said all three of us would go together. I said, I'd be honoured. And I mean that. I want to really hear from the horse's mouth. That's what I wanted to do. And of course, you have to go through the process of an NDA. They vet you like mad. But then it was on February the 4th that I was booked to go. And Paul told me the day before he's been told he can't go. And also Vicky can't go. But both of them, because they're involved with podcasts and the media, even though the Dutch people have gone recently. But anyway, that's another matter. But they're happy for me to go. And I thought, why? Because I'm quite vocal on social media. I haven't got millions of support. I've only got about 30,000 on things like X. But they said, yes, it's okay. You've got not a problem with it.
Did they make you sign an NDA?
Yes. And I respect that NDA. And the reason why I'm going to respect it is because I want to try and get back to see before, talk to him if he'd like to see me. And I've written to him. Again, I don't know if, to say thank you for allowing me to come and see you and that sort of thing. And, but I won't say what happened there, except to say that when I did go in to see Tommy, not only did he supply some chocolates, some bottles of water and crisps and things like that.
Freddos.
Yes, that's right. Yes, well, I was so chuffed he did that. And I met this I'm 6'4". He's not that big a guy, Tommy. So I can say this, he hugged me and said, "Hello, thank you for coming." He's obviously learned about what I did, and I put my head above the parapet and see support, and he had a lot of respect for that. But I'm so inspired for the next 2 hours. I listened to him, of which he probably spoke for 90% of that 2 hours. And I sat there, and I'm going to say, in awe of what he said. And I learned a lot of things. And I'm not allowed to say what those things are. That's what the NDA tells me to do, and I respect that.
And did you warm to him as a human being?
Oh, without a doubt. This is the sort of guy I'd love to go down and have a pint with him. And
Did you think to yourself while you were sat there talking to Tommy Robinson that you have been lied to for years by the media?
Absolutely. And I'll go even further to say this. I put a press release out about 2 weeks ago, just after I saw Tommy, regarding this is relevant, so bear with me, about potholes, because obviously I'm involved with motorists and things, and you know what our crater on the roads. You see it. I mean, driving to the studio here today, I couldn't believe some of the potholes I was seeing coming over to your studios, Liam.
I can only apologise.
Yeah, exactly. And I made the thing was it would cost £14.5 billion to repair the potholes in this country. The irony is to repair all the roads would only cost another £1 billion. So it's about 16 billion. Anyway, that's the point. So I put that press release out to the mainstream media, and I'm known by all the top political commentators. They all come to me. What do you think about this motoring? What do you think about that? Hospital parking, parking charges, fuel duty, are forecourts ripping us off? All those sorts of things. They always come to me first off to say for a quote or comment. So I put my usual press release about this potholes, which was actually an analysis done by a major economic group. No one took it up. And I spoke to one political editor of a major national paper who's I regard as a friend, and they said, well, we still want to work with you, Howard, and all that sort of thing, but because of your association recently with Tommy Robinson, we can't do it. Can you believe that? That's mainstream media have dictated. It's nothing to do, potholes have got nothing to do with Tommy. Why are you associating that?
And the tide will turn when he comes out.
Yeah.
When he's got the backing of Elon Musk and Donald Trump, which he will do.
And thank heavens for Elon Musk and this thing, because there's no doubt about it. He made the comment about Nigel not being actually
fit for purpose.
Exactly.
You'll see how many people follow in your shoes when it's publicly acceptable. And you'll know that you took the leap of faith first, and people will also remember it was you.
Yeah. I mean, I've been asked a lot of questions about what am I doing in future in politics. I think our country stinks. I'm, the lies, the cheating. Look at just things like not just people what they put on CVs. We've got Rachel from accounts, and you've got Jonathan Reynolds, and all that saying that he was a solicitor. How did these people get in those positions? If you lie, like you've made the point about Nigel lying about Tommy, and that he's been violent towards women, that particular comment, it will come back and grab them by the proverbial throat, and they're going to regret it big time. They're going to suffer, I think, long term. And even I understand that Elon Musk is not happy with Nigel, and Elon is much closer to Donald Trump than Nigel is. And I think there's going to be a big falling out here. And Nigel's just come out saying about Zelensky regarding the Ukrainian situation. He's not a dictator, Zelensky. I tend to agree a little bit with Nigel. I don't think Zelensky is a dictator, but going against Donald Trump, I was surprised him doing that. And, I expect, this is going to get out there and people in Reform at the headquarters will see me saying this. And I repeat, and this is a direct message to them, please grow up. Recognise that people like Tommy Robinson are good for the people of this country because he's the one exposing the nastiness as what's happened, the child rape gangs. Grow up and recognise that's what he's done. Support him for what he's doing there. You don't have to do anything more than that to come out. And above all, Nigel, apologise for the lies you've been putting out there.
I'm so glad you said that. I've got a couple more very important questions regarding Tommy. Obviously, you signed the NDA, so we've got to tread carefully. But when you were visiting Tommy, we won't discuss what was said, but you obviously met maybe 4, 5, 6 prison officers. What was the general consensus? Did you get the impression that prison officers were in favour of Tommy or not in favour of Tommy?
They're definitely in favour of Tommy. They were very supportive, and I was trying to make small talk as we were walking through the various prison gates, and you go through and locking up behind you and all that sort of thing. And I asked questions, I said, why do you do this? And all of them loved their job, and one even volunteered, said, and we love Tommy too. So I don't think in terms of an NDA I've broken any confidence there, and they respect him considerably. And It's a shame what I'm hearing now. Certain things happening to him now. He's not allowed to see his family, and he's only eating tuna at the moment and things like that. All sorts of things. They're taking away some of his. He can't watch GB News now and things like that. And it's terrible. The man is a human being. He's a family man, and he's trying to do good for all of us. And he's been prosecuted and persecuted, totally wrongly. And the only person he's upset or entities upset are the courts.
Yeah, was that your first ever time going to a jail?
Yeah.
Well, may I suggest that you be very careful what you say under the Starmer regime, because you could find yourself in there for a longer stint.
Well, I'm surprised. I'm surprised some of the hurty comments.
You're a contender.
Yeah. I'm sad. And it would be terrible, but I'm going to continue for free speech, and that's what this is about.
How important is free speech to you?
Massively. And that's the reason why I've left Reform, because they were trying to control me. They said, if you keep talking about Tommy Robinson, it wasn't even actually saying you supporting Tommy Robinson. It was, the actual message was, if you continue to talk about Tommy Robinson, okay, you will be expelled from Reform UK. That's the sinister thing behind the headquarters there, and that they're supposed to be representing free speech.
And it is sinister, because when you suppress speech, you're also suppressing thought. And look what you found out since you were able to think freely and do your own investigations. You've sat opposite a wonderful man in jail, and you said that you found him inspirational.
Absolutely inspirational. I was in awe of him, and he's, I worry about his health, his mental demeanour and all those things. I hope he's getting support. I think his legal team are trying to do as best they can, etc. as well. I think he's coming up to some legal thing coming up soon, isn't he? There's a court case coming up now, which I think he stands a good chance of winning. But in essence, my meeting with him was warm, friendly, and I repeat that word. I was inspired by that man. I sat there because he told me a lot of details about why he's there, what he's been doing over the years. He told me about his background, his growing up, and all that sort of thing. I was almost I had a lump in my throat a couple of times about some of the things he's done, going back to his Luton days and the football stuff and everything like that. And, you're looking at a guy here that I used to have an old Bantam motorbike dressed up and I had long hair, and I wasn't a Hell's Angel, but we used to go down to Brighton and, the Mods and Rockers days. And people might remember those days.
The Quadrophenia days.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't get involved in the fight, but I was on the fringes of it. I saw a lot of things going on. But what's happening now is much, much worse in this country. The knife crime, the insidious Islamic infiltration of our lives, and the government allowing it to happen. We saw Keir Starmer only this week actually hosting an event which only had Muslim business leaders there.
Could you imagine if the boot was on the other foot?
Exactly.
Everyone would be branded racist, and it would be front page of the paper, and all the half-wits on X would just be targeting people. The treatment of Tommy at the moment in jail. So we've established that the prison officers like Tommy. I've seen that also. So we know that the treatment is coming right from the top, which will lead me to one of my final questions for you. So the messing around with his visits, the cancelling his phone calls, the taking away his canteen, the little things that will really mess with somebody's mind, the 4 months in solitary confinement, which will break most men. He's going to need counselling when he comes out. The person that's pulling those strings, what would your message be to them people?
Well, it has to be coming from cabinet level, the Attorney General or something like that, because I do not believe the prison governor is actually saying, do this, do that. I do believe that it's coming from number 10.
And what would you say to number 10?
I say number 10, for God's sake, grow up, and your time will come when we recognise what you've just done. And I think that we have the war crimes in The Hague and that sort of thing, but we don't just want a public inquiry in this thing. We need to have an inquiry to find out who is responsible for this, and they should pay dearly, even to the extent that they should go to prison for what they're doing.
I mean, if we're so big on human rights, where's Tommy's?
Well, he hasn't got any human rights. It's this coercive mind game approach to the man. This is vengeful. This is definitely, people are actually, they don't like the fact he's popular. They don't, and let's face it, the institutions that are protected for years and years, the child rape gangs, You mentioned earlier about the number of kids that have been, subjected to this. It's hundreds of thousands. It's not that. And the good work done by Charlie Peters of GB News, who found that there were 50 cities, not just, it's not just Oldham and Rochdale or whatever, all those sorts of places. It's right across the country. The orchestration and the cover-up is more than sickening. And Tommy's the one who's trying to reveal that to protect all of us. And he's being penalised for doing the right thing and telling the truth. And I'm going to say I love the man dearly. He's a cracking guy.
And on a final note, without me probing you, is there anything else you'd like to say to anybody listening or watching?
Well, you've heard the truth from me. This is me speaking, and I'm passionate about it. I don't need to do this. I'm doing this because it's right. And the number of people that write to me every single day, I get 30, 40, 50 emails, about 100 WhatsApp messages, texts and things like that saying, well done, Howard. There's the odd one saying, oh, stop sniting from the thing, sort of thing. Get used to it. You failed. You've lost your mayoral election. You didn't win down in Dover and Deal. I don't care about that. I'm not in this to become an MP or a famous person. I'm in this for what is right. And I'm going to continue to fight my campaign called FairFuelUK.com.
Yeah, where can people find you, Howard?
Well, go to FairFuelUK.com. It's free to join up. All it is, I've got 1.7 million drivers, ranging from even cyclists, even though they don't like me too much, all the way up to truckers, basically because we're still one of the highest tax drivers in the world. And I want to stop that situation. But we're going to have things like more local low traffic neighbourhoods, LTNs, ULEZs, more parking charges, 15-minute neighbourhoods. All these sorts of things are happening. So I'm going to be continuing to fight that. And I've got a lot of support in Parliament for that. I'm very close to a lot of MPs who back that sort of thing. So please sign up for free at FairFuelUK.com. I'm about to issue an opinion survey, which if you sign up as soon as you can, you'll get a link to that opinion survey to ask what you think about what's happening with road user issues. But also there's a question about what do you think about Tommy Robinson's incarceration and a few other things related to that.
Okay. Do follow Howard on his journey, because I think there's a lot more to come. And if you've made it to the end of this interview, please remember to like and subscribe to this channel, because the bigger the channel, the better the guests. And we get the honour of having people like you come on the show. And I want to thank you. And I tell you my observation, the final note, is that I'm not a highbrow, hard-hitting politician. I'm very much a working class bloke. And you've come on today and you've shared the space with me. And that tells me that you are for the people, not just for Howard. And I want to thank you for coming on.
It's been a pleasure, Lib. Thank you for having me, mate.
Yes, Joy. Good health,
Cheers, mate.
Thank you.